I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 2022 Heritage Speaker event of the Grand Prairie Historical Organization here at the Grand Prairie Museum. This month's speaker is John Tull. And John, I understand you've brought some family here with you, so if you'd like to introduce your children and grandchildren and friends that are here, you're welcome to point some people out.
Well, I have my kid brother over here, Mike.
All right.
He's a lot taller than I am. And have my baby sister, Linda.
Uh-huh.
My first daughter was Susan. And her husband, Susan and her husband, Calvin Spindor.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And their daughter, my first granddaughter, was Allison. And then my second granddaughter was Adrienne over here, better known as Andy.
All right.
and her youngest daughter over here that I've been telling all along is growing up too fast, and she's already taller than, I think she's taller than I am, taller than her mother, I think.
Okay, anyone else?
Her name is Bella.
Bella, uh-huh. And don't forget Teeny over here.
Yeah, my second daughter, Titania, she tries to take good care of me as best she can, so she usually brings me to meetings.
I think she's doing a pretty darn good job. So are there any other guests or family here?
Oh, let's see here.
Nope, that's it? All right.
That's
So
it, I guess.
So tell us, when and where were you born?
I was born in Waco, Texas, in McLennan County, in November 7, 1925.
1925.
That's been a year or two ago.
Yeah, just a few. I think you've probably seen a lot in your lifetime. That makes you 96, is that correct?
96.
96.
Your mathematics is good.
Thank you. Thank you. It was pre-done. So tell us, what were the name of your parents?
My dad, Hubert Tull, his middle name was Adelot, A-Y-D-E-L-O-T-T.
Adelot?
Adelot.
Did he eat a lot?
No.
I'm sure he was teased of that, I bet.
He was named for his mother's maiden name.
Okay.
No, that's not right either.
How about your mom? What was your mom's name?
Mildred.
Mildred?
Her maiden name was Camac.
Mm-hmm.
Mildred Camac. Mildred Lenora Camac.
Okay. Now, in your lifetime, did you have the opportunity to know your grandparents?
My grandmother, my dad's mother, I knew, and my mama's mother, I knew them.
You knew your grandmothers.
I never knew either of my grandfathers because they'd already died before I was born.
Okay. Well, do you remember what their names were?
Yes. My mother's father was E.E. Camac.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the E.E. was for. Eugene Edwin or something like that. I don't know. I never did get to meet him, so
Uh-huh.
he died before I was born, and the other. Oh, what was the question?
It's okay. How about your grandmothers? What were the name of your grandmothers?
My grandmother. Well, my mother's mother was Catherine Kamak. I don't remember what her maiden name was.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, her married name was Kamak.
And then your father's mother, do you remember
My
her?
father's mother was Ada Lockett Fisher.
Okay, wow. And there you go. So you've introduced a couple of your siblings here. How many siblings did you have growing up or in your lifetime?
Well, there was Aileen was the first. Was my first sister,
Mm-hmm.
firstborn sister. Then there was Helen Ruth was the second one. And Lois Ann was the third one.
Mm-hmm.
They've all passed away.
Mm-hmm. So
And
you...
Mike was my youngest sibling. No, Linda was my youngest one. I'll get it right in a minute.
Well, how many were there all together?
Oh, that's too many.
Too many?
There were four. There were four with the first family. My mother passed away
Oh,
shortly after
sorry to
my
hear
11th birthday,
oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
and Dad married again
Mm-hmm.
in 1941,
Mm-hmm.
and then the others were born.
Three more. So
And
four with the
there
first. And
there
three?
was the first of the second group was Pat, was her middle name. And she hated her first name, so I won't even tell you what that was. But anyhow, she's passed away too.
Mm-hmm. And where did you fall within all the siblings? The
I
oldest?
was first.
You're first. Okay. Awesome. So,
So I've outlived my father and his father and just about everybody else in the family, I think.
oh, wow. So you said you were born in Waco. At what point did you move up here to the Metroplex?
Well, there were quite a few moves before then.
Okay.
There was my second sibling was born in Marlin in Falls County.
Mm-hmm.
The third sibling, Helen, was born in Dallas. Well, we lived she was born in Dallas. I don't know where we lived then because I don't remember any. My memory was kind of fuzzy back then.
I think it's pretty good, actually.
Because that was just about 3 years after I was born, so I was only 3 then. Anyhow, then we, after she was born, we moved to the Fisher family farm down in McLennan County,
Mm-hmm.
about 12, 13 miles out of Waco.
Okay.
And we lived on that farm then for several years. And I attended first 2 years of elementary school in Riesel.
Riesel? Never even heard of Riesel.
Well, it's a little town. It was a little town about 300 back then.
Mm-hmm.
It grew a little bigger, but it's smaller now. There's not much
And it's
left
still
of it.
around? It's not a ghost town?
No, not a ghost town.
Okay.
There's still people there. There's a business or two. There's a pizza place, and then there's a sandwich place.
Okay.
I don't remember the names of them.
So eventually you moved up here to the Metroplex. So where did you go to school here?
Well, we left the farm sometime in, when was it? Anyhow, we left the farm and we moved to Union Bower,
Mm-hmm.
just outside community, just outside of Irving,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and we lived there for 1 year. Then we moved to the Dalworthington Gardens community, which was a started up by President Roosevelt
Really?
as a place close enough to a city where you drive to work. You'd come back and you'd have enough land there to raise some crops, or have a cow or something, you know, raise a cow or a pig or something. And we moved there in 1936.
Wow. So where did you go to school
And I
in
went
that
to
area?
school.
Mhm.
I went to school then at the old Johnson Station School, which was at the corner of what is now the corner of South Cooper and
Someone's offering Mayfield.
Mayfield. Yeah, yeah. The school's no longer there,
No?
but the streets are still there.
Yeah. And where did you go to high school?
Went to high school in Arlington, at the old Arlington High School when it was at the corner of Cooper and Abram.
Mm-hmm. So in high school, were you active in any clubs or sports or anything?
I was in the most active thing I had was I was in the band.
In the band, what instrument did you play?
Played an old bass tuba.
Bass tuba. Can you still play it?
No,
No.
don't even have it. That bass tuba was one that Dad had when he was young.
Oh, wow.
But the last time I saw it, last I heard, it was left out in the street, and one of the neighbors was backing out of the driveway and ran over it.
Left
Smashed
in
it
the
all to
street.
pieces.
That sounds
And
like
that
a
was
child
when-
was involved.
Yeah, but I was in the Navy at the time, so I didn't know what was going on until after they told me.
Wow, that's pretty neat. So your dad played the tuba and you played the tuba.
Well, I'm not sure where it came from, but the last year I was in high school, I had to play bass clef baritone,
Mhm.
which is a much smaller instrument than the
Right.
tuba.
Well, pretty neat. So you didn't play any sports though in school?
No,
No. So what year did you graduate from high school?
1943, I think.
1943. Wow. So when you were a young teen in school or right out of school, did you have any jobs?
I worked on weekends for the same company that Dad was working for, Southern Ice Company
Southern Ice.
in Dallas.
Now this is back when you had ice boxes, correct?
Yes, ice boxes.
And did
That's
you
all
put the
we
ice
had.
block at the bottom or at the top of the ice box?
It was it depended, but the ice boxes I saw, it was at the top.
At the top?
Yeah.
Pretty neat. Before refrigeration for you young
Right.
folks. So that's pretty neat. Any other jobs as a teen?
Yeah. One summer, I worked in a machine shop. I was kind of the guy that greased up the machines and did a little cleanup, but I didn't run any of the machines then. I just kept them lubricated.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So being born in 1925, I can only assume that you were probably drafted into the war.
No,
No?
I joined
You joined
before. I joined
volunteer.
before I was 18.
Before you were 18.
So they didn't start drafting till after 18.
Okay.
So I beat the draft that way.
That way you
And
got to
and
pick
I
which.
picked where I wanted to go.
There you go. And where did you pick?
Navy.
The Navy. Oh, wow. So did you serve in World War II?
Yes. For about the last few years about the last half of the war, I was in the Navy.
Okay. Did you have to go overseas or did you serve at
Yes,
stateside?
I was stateside through boot camp, and then they sent me to a training school,
Mm-hmm.
which is right there on the base, on the training camp base. After 3 or 4 months there, they transferred me to an advanced training school. They called it a fleet training school,
Mm-hmm.
which is still in San Diego, in San Diego Bay.
Mm-hmm.
but it was across the bay from the first one. So I didn't move. I was there for 3 months. Then they flew me up to San Francisco to the old. They assigned me to Treasure Island in San Francisco,
Right.
which at that time the government had taken over and was a Navy base,
Mm-hmm.
Navy receiving station. That's where they transfer people and put them in the receiving station until they're needed somewhere else.
Okay.
And so I was there for a while, and then they put me on a troop ship and took me overseas.
Now, did you go Pacific or did you go
Pacific.
Atlantic? In Pacific.
And after I was on that troop ship for about 3 months, that was a long time to stay on a troop ship.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
A lot of rocking.
they put me on another troop ship because that one was going back to the States. They put me on this other troop ship, and it stayed out there, and I was there for I think about 6 weeks or so. And then I moved to, then they transferred me to the USS Iowa battleship,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I did my overseas duty, was on that.
And what was your job?
My training was in fire control, and that's where you're taking all of the things that would alter the airplane's direction and speed, and could alter the ship by taking into account the roll and the pitch of the ship,
Mm-hmm.
speed and direction of the airplane, and the wind speed. And we communicate. We use a computer, a mechanical computer,
Mm-hmm.
to come up with the lead angle for firing the guns that are shooting down the aircraft.
So when
And
you
our hope was always to shoot it down before it got to us.
Exactly. So when you said fire control, you weren't talking about the ship catching fire. You were
No.
talking about being fired upon.
Yes, that's right. Either
Wow.
fired upon them or being fired upon.
Right. Things that we hope we never have to endure. You've gone through. How many years were you in the Navy?
Not probably about. I don't know. I haven't counted. About 4.
About 4 years.
Yeah, it wasn't a long term. I was just in for the duration of the war. Plus, they say duration plus 6 weeks after.
6
Then they
weeks.
started releasing the ones who had been in for that period to the end of the war, plus 6 weeks afterwards.
Now, World War II, did you also serve in the Korean War?
Yes, I did. After we had moved to Grand Prairie,
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back. I got called back into duty for the Korean War.
Wow.
And I only did that because when I was going to college in Arlington,
Mm-hmm.
I signed up for the reserves again. But I didn't have to go anywhere then. I just, after moving to Grand Prairie, we went to, we started on 1 weekend a month. We'd go out to the Naval Air Station.
Hensley Field out here?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
Hensley Field Naval Air Station, and be out there. But they were going to, if they got called up, they would be called up as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to turn me loose because my company had already said that they would request a deferment if the unit got called in.
Mm-hmm.
And they kicked me out of the unit right then because they said the unit was going to go together
Right.
instead of one at a time.
Right.
So after they released me from that, I did get called back in to the Navy. But I could only serve 1 year because that's the only time I had left in my reserve enlistment was that 1 year. Of course, on the last day when they're turning you loose, they try to talk you into staying longer.
Of course.
But I never did.
So you mentioned you had moved to Grand Prairie. So was that like after high school or after the war you moved to Grand Prairie?
Yes, that was after World War II.
World War II. Mm-hmm.
And by that time, the first two children were born.
Okay.
It was John Jr., my son,
Uh-huh.
and he served in the Navy too.
Followed in your footsteps, huh?
No, not quite. He served as a hospital corpsman.
Oh, okay.
So he was in
Well, I think we skipped over something. So you moved to Grand Prairie, and around that time you said your two children or your two oldest were born. So we skipped over when you got married. Tell me about how you met your wife.
Yeah, that's in there too.
What is her name? Yeah. Were you living in Arlington at the time, or?
I was living still with Dad.
Okay.
At his house in Dalworthington Gardens.
In Dalworthington Gardens, okay.
And he lived there longer than anywhere else.
Mhm.
Because during my early years we were moving from here to yonder.
Yeah.
And we wound up at Dalworthington Gardens, and he stayed there until he passed away.
Okay. So how did you meet your wife?
I met her first. We were attending the Abram Street Church of Christ in Arlington, and I met her there, but I didn't really get to know her very well there.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, it was interesting there when our first date was on a hayride, and the girl it was hayride put on by some of the people there at that church.
Mm-hmm.
But the hayride was the girl was supposed to ask the boy, and she asked me to be her date for that hayride.
Very progressive back then.
Yeah. And that's when we met, and then after the hayride, we had several other dates, and several more months passed. And I was still in college at what was then the North Texas Agricultural College,
Okay.
now the University of Texas at Arlington,
Right.
UTA.
Right.
But I just went 1 year to college, and then we got married.
Now, what's her name?
Virginia Peters.
Uh-huh.
And we, when we first got married, we moved to a duplex in West Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
We lived there a few weeks. And while I was still going to, occasionally we'd still go to Arlington to that church.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a man there that was a builder that was a member of that church, and he had just completed a small house in Arlington.
Okay.
We looked at it and bought it,
Oh, nice.
and lived there for about a year. Our firstborn child, the son, was born there while we were in Arlington.
Okay.
We lived there for a while, and then we sold the house and moved into a garage apartment. And that was still in Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
And our second child, Susan, was born there when we lived in that garage apartment.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed there for a little while longer. Meantime, I got my job at Chance Vault. They'd moved enough stuff down from Connecticut
Mm-hmm.
to the old Timco building, well, the old North American Aviation
Right.
building. And my first job that I had pretty soon after we got married was with a construction company.
Mm-hmm.
and they did some work on the First Methodist Church in Grand Prairie. They
Okay.
did some work there. That was my first work in Grand Prairie.
Mm-hmm. So what year did you move to Grand Prairie?
Well, let's see, 1949, I believe.
And after you moved to Grand Prairie, were there any more children born?
This one,
Just
this
one
one was
left.
born then.
So
And
two
then
in
we
Arlington
decided-
and one in.
And we just lived, even when we first moved to Grand Prairie, it was just a 2-bedroom house,
Mm-hmm.
frame house. And we had some work done on it.
You remember what street that was on?
Yes, it was 1642 Oak Street,
Oak Street. Okay, that's in the northeast section of
northeast
Prairie.
section. But that was good walking distance to Chance
To
Vault.
Chance Spot, right?
Right.
Which was
So
on
that was
Jefferson.
a lot of times I would walk there. And that was back, at that time we had that big overpass over the railroad track and over Jefferson Street. And
Yeah,
then
they just recently tore that down.
Yes, they tore that down, but I walked over that overpass many a time going to work.
You knew how many steps up and how many
Yeah,
steps down.
Just about. And even if after we moved to Grand Prairie, though, there was a couple of other people that worked doing the same work I was doing at Grand Prairie, at Chance Vault, and we would take turns. One, because we only had one car,
Mm-hmm.
and the only car we had at that time was a '36 Chevrolet. We drove the wheels off of that car just about. We drove it all over the place. But anyhow, we'd take turns. The three guys would get in a car and drive to that at the end of that, at the north end of that overpass.
Mm-hmm.
It landed into kind of a vacant area that at that time somebody was using it as a parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
and people would park there and go across the overpass and get right into either Timco or Chance Vault, whichever one they were working at.
Okay. So it was two separate companies at that time?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was
Pretty neat.
some people that used to work at North American got together and formed a Texas Engineering and Manufacturing Company. That was Timco.
Timco. Mm-hmm.
And they were occupying some of that space that the North American company had,
Okay.
was using North American aircraft.
Wow. So what did you do
when
for them? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then when Chance Vault began moving down there, well, they were first occupying the other main building, the other main
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing building, while the Timco people still had they had the one on the east side, and
Okay.
we had the building on the west side.
Okay. So what did you do for them?
I learned how to operate some of the machinery that's used in manufacturing the parts. That was training school that we had at first.
Mm-hmm.
After that, well, that's where they put me, was in manufacturing on milling machines, operating milling machines, which cuts parts, cuts stock down to the bare stock down to eventually the size of the part that you need,
Okay.
and pretty well gets it the shape before it needs to go to inspection and be put on the aircraft.
Now, do you remember what aircrafts that were being manufactured at that time?
Yes. The F-4U Corsair.
The
We
Corsair.
built a lot of those Corsairs after they moved down here. But that was that was a Navy airplane that used quite a bit in the Navy during the war.
Definitely, definitely.
And we made a whole bunch of them after Chancellor moved down here.
Wow. Is that aircraft still in production today, or they stopped it?
No, oh, they stopped. They hadn't made any of them in ages.
Okay.
And Chancellor Corporation is no longer.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's now Triumph.
Right. Parts of it's
And
Triumph, yeah.
Yeah, and
Lockheed Martin.
of course that's moved to Red Oak now. It's not in Dallas anymore.
Right, right.
So the buildings that we were working in have been torn down now, and something else has been built up there.
Yeah, they torn down most of those buildings,
Yeah.
and Home Depot is part of it.
Is that
the big
right?
warehouse there.
Yeah, there's warehouses there now.
Yeah. So they're using the runway right now to store the Suburbans that are being built at the GM plant in Arlington. The chip shortage.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, when you drive past the runway,
Yeah.
it's 2 miles long and it's
Yeah.
all Suburbans. So, growing up, you're raising your children here in Grand Prairie. What are some of your best memories? Did they all go to Grand Prairie High?
No,
No?
she didn't. She went to South Grand Prairie,
Ah, okay.
and she graduated there.
So you must have moved from Oak Street.
We moved from Oak Street. We bought a bigger house on the Show Place in the Hillside Edition,
Mm-hmm.
and lived there long enough. I paid for the house finally and added on to it.
And you still live
And
there.
still live there.
So you've only lived in 2 houses in Grand Prairie,
Right.
Oak and Show Place.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. So, what are some of your favorite memories of raising your children here?
Well, I think the two oldest ones remember an ultimatum that I'd given them about a load of gravel, just dirt, I think. It was dumped in the driveway
Mm-hmm.
that we were going to use, and it was still dumped up, or still humped up there, in the driveway. And before she was born, well, I'd given them the ultimatum not to be digging around in that dirt, until we got it spread out where we wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided they'd go ahead. The two oldest ones, John Jr. and Susan, decided to get out there and just dig in it, and they would watch and see us coming before we got there, and then we wouldn't know that they were out there. But that didn't work. That didn't work. They did find out that we did find out that they had been out there playing in it. And it didn't go too well with them after that.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. I think they remember that.
Do you have any other memories of PTA and elementary school of your children growing up here? Any sports?
Well, I was in the Grand Prairie Toastmasters Club for a while,
Mm-hmm.
for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't learn to be a professional speaker while I was there, but it was very interesting.
So did you attend church here in Grand Prairie, or did you continue
Yes.
to attend?
We continued. My wife's name was Virginia, and most of her relatives lived in Arlington, so we still sometimes would go to church. Excuse me, we'd go to church in Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
But when we started going regularly here, it was at the old 4th and Church Street
Mm-hmm.
Church of Christ,
Okay.
which is no longer there. That building had been sold, and something else there now.
Is the congregation still in Grand Prairie?
Well, I think most of them finally wound up at what is now the, oh, good night. I can't look at my notes because I don't think I even had it written down on the note.
I think
But,
your daughter's wanting to offer the name.
Yeah,
Cross Point?
yeah, now it's Cross Point Church
Okay.
of Christ on, just off of I-20.
On Barden?
Yes, on
Okay.
Borden Road.
Wow. So when you were raising your family here, what are some of the businesses that you would go to? Where did you grocery shop and dress shop for your daughters?
Well,
You probably
now-
didn't do the dress shopping.
Well, there was we shopped at Wyatt's grocery store, and Wyatt's cafeteria one of them had a cafeteria next door to it.
The one on Center Street?
Yes,
Center and Jefferson? Mm-hmm.
and we'd eat there a lot
Mm-hmm.
until they closed it down. When they closed it down, we had to find some other place to eat. But we did all right.
So someone in the audience said that you used to shop at J.C. Penney's here on Main Street?
Yes,
Yeah.
They always get our gym clothes.
yeah.
We always had to get our gym clothes.
Got your gym clothes there. Is that the blue with the stripes?
Well, I think ours was solid blue with our name monogrammed on it.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember that old penny store there.
Yeah. Anywhere else that you frequented? Any other businesses?
There was I can't remember the name of it, but it was on Main Street, White's Home. I don't remember the name of it, but it had we got a lot of furniture there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was on Main Street, just pretty close, just east of town,
Just east of
on
town?
Main Street.
Okay. So you mentioned that you were in Toastmasters. Was there any other organizations that you belonged to in your adult life?
No, that was it.
Just that one?
That was enough.
How long were you in Toastmasters?
A couple of years, I think.
So you mentioned also that you ate a lot at Wyatt's Cafeteria. Were there any other restaurants or cafes or coffee shops that you like to go to?
That was the main one that we went to quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
when it was open.
Okay.
We didn't eat out a whole lot.
No?
Couldn't afford to. I wasn't making that kind of money.
Exactly. So in the time that you've been here in Grand Prairie, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the years?
Well, I know Virginia, when she was still alive, she always wanted Grand Prairie to have shopping centers besides just right downtown,
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't anything like that here.
Right.
Arlington and Irving was building up. They were building shopping centers all around town, and they're taking up just about all the available space.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest improvement I could see was when the turnpike was built,
Mm-hmm.
and of course State Highway 161 on the frontage roads, and that was a big boon for Grand Prairie, because that's when Grand Prairie got all these shopping centers that she would have loved to have gone to and visited if she lived long enough.
Right. Yeah, in the last 10 years, Grand Prairie has seen a big growth on 161.
It sure has.
Yes. So the turnpike, you mentioned it, I-30, that was probably a big deal at its time. So it probably brought a lot of industry along I-30 when it came through. Because before that, it
Yes.
was just Highway 80, which is Main Street.
Well, there was for a while, that somebody got together and built this Dallas-Fort Worth Toll Road,
Mm-hmm.
which is now I-30,
Right, right.
and that was a big deal then at the time.
And that was around 57
I
or
don't
so?
remember when that was.
Yeah. So, if you had your grandchildren or great-grandchildren watching this in the future, what are some of the things you would like to impart to them?
They may not want to hear my advice.
Oh, come on.
They didn't always listen to me at the time. I didn't always give them good advice.
Aw.
You
I'm
know,
hearing a whisper from the side that's
yeah,
not true.
No, I had a big learning process going on. I had to learn a few things too when they were growing up.
Yeah, our children teach us probably just as much as we teach them, right?
Probably more if we'd listen.
Right, right. So what do you think that your legacy here in Grand Prairie will be?
I don't know.
I see a pretty good legacy right here beside me.
Yeah, but they don't none of them live in Grand Prairie. They all scattered out.
Scattered to the winds. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, your youngest daughter still lives here in Grand Prairie.
Yeah. She lives with me at the Oaks, at the Hillside place.
Mm-hmm.
She tries to take care of me as best I'll let her. I'm not always a good patient for her.
So is there anything else that you would like to add? Anything that we've missed?
Probably the things that you missed would be things that I didn't particularly want to add anyhow.
Do tell.
But anyhow.
Any fun stories other than your children digging in the...
Well, my son followed me into the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And along about the time of the Vietnam War, well, he joined the Navy, but he became a hospital corpsman.
Right.
Where we were trying to shoot people down, well, he was trying to pick up people and take them to the hospital ship.
Right.
And that affected him quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he worked at Kip's coffee shop.
Yeah, he worked at old Kip's coffee shop before he went to
On Main and
the
Fifth?
Navy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
After coming back from the Navy, he worked at Stevens Park
Mm-hmm.
Hospital there on the Fort Worth cutoff.
Okay. In Dallas?
He worked, in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
He worked there for a while before he got married and they moved to Tyler.
Mm-hmm. So is there any other dark, deep secrets you want to share? Now's your time.
Now my time.
We'll have it forever and ever.
I know it. I don't think of any right now.
Okay. Is there anything any of your children would like to add? Or I see a hand raised.
I wondered, when he was in the Navy, when you first joined, you said something fire. You were damage control, or were you a gunner's mate?
Fire control.
Fire control.
It was calculating how much lead angle the gun needs to be aimed at in order to hit the airplane when it gets
What was the rate at the time? Were you flying the boppers or what were you shooting at the time?
What kind of gun were you shooting?
Oh well, we weren't shooting guns. We were operating the mechanical computer down in the plotting room. They were controlling the 5-inch 38 caliber guns on board the ship, aiming at them because they were anti-aircraft guns.
Wow.
BB stacker.
He said you weren't a BB stacker. That
No.
must be a Navy term.
No.
I can't imagine stacking BBs. Anything else anyone would like to add?
The quilt.
The quilt.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it
Tell us
wasn't this
about this
quilt.
quilt.
It wasn't this quilt,
Yes,
was
it
it?
is. That's yours.
I've noticed they've turned it sideways, though.
Yeah. I didn't recognize it.
Yeah, it's turned sideways.
But this quilt was given to us by
They're here.
yeah, they're here, okay. Yeah. And that was it was a quilt made to be given to servicemen.
Veterans.
And
After your honor.
several years ago, I had the opportunity to take a honor flight from Love Field to Washington, D.C. to see the memorials, wartime memorials in Washington.
Wow.
And Calvin Spender, who's here, was my guardian. He went with me.
He was your guardian.
Yeah, they had to have a serviceman. The service people would go free,
Mm-hmm.
but he'd have to have a guardian go along with you,
Okay.
and he had to pay his own way,
Oh.
and so he volunteered for that,
Uh-huh.
and that cost him quite a bit of money. I imagine. I don't know how much it cost,
Uh-huh.
but we had a good time. After we came back, and I was meeting at the Grand Prairie Historical Society meeting,
Genealogy meeting.
genealogy meeting, yeah.
Mhm.
And we were talking about that trip,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when the quilt was presented to me.
Oh, nice. Now, what year did you go on the honor flight?
When was it? I forgot.
Oh, well, while she's looking that up, how many days were you in Washington,
2017. 2017.
Okay, 2017. How long were you there?
Just for the weekend
For the
mainly.
weekend. Okay, wow.
We left on a Friday and came back Sunday, didn't we?
And you went to all the war museums, you said, the
Yes.
memorials?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see the White House?
Yes, we saw it. We didn't stay there. We weren't invited in.
You weren't invited in? You have to stand in that long line.
But we drove past it.
Yes.
That
Wonderful.
was an interesting trip.
Yeah.
We didn't stand in many lines. They did a heck of a job. There were nothing but World War II veterans.
Wow.
And there weren't a lot left.
Right.
2017
Mhm.
and a few Korean War, and that was, I guess, 30 of you guys.
Vietnam, there was some Vietnam.
Yeah, one guy, 30, there was like 30 of those guys, and as he said, they required each one to have a companion guardian.
Right. Mhm.
So that, you could just be sure that they were well taken care of.
Sure.
Besides the other staff. But we didn't wait in any lines, and when we landed at the Reagan National Airport,
Mhm.
we had an honor guard put up on the freeway, all the traffic got over. The honor that they showed those World War II veterans throughout the Capitol was just an emotional event.
I bet. It's probably an event you'll remember just as much as he will.
Yeah.
Forever. Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude for today?
I've told you about all I can remember about it.
Your whole life story here.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another question?
Yeah, I just want, for the record, Ruth Goodman made the quilt.
Right.
Ruth Goodman made the
And I
quilt.
didn't know whether that got said out loud.
I think it got whispered, but
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Well, I want to thank you for being here today and adding to our collection for the heritage speakers and And like I said a second ago, I joked and said this will be kept around forever, but we hope it'll be kept as long as we're in existence. And anyone coming to the museum can come and see this interview and hear your own words, your family, and
Oh, no.
for the rest, for eternity. So thank you again, Mr. Tull, for being here and speaking with us.